Ooh. It looks like we're live now. Normally is where I'd say, thanks, Ray, but I don't have that recording to actually get me into this thing. For those who are just sitting in now, we're going to wait about 2 or 3 minutes now that we are live streaming on YouTube as well as recording for posterity. This is the RayWenderlich.com livecast for Google I/O 2021 virtual. I'm going to vamp for a few moments here while we wait for some people to tune in. I need the reading glasses for this one. All right. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us for this Google I/O livecast. I am Drew Freeman. I am the host of the RayWenderlich.com podcast. You can find us online at www.raywenderlich.com/podcast. We just wrapped up season 11 with Nishant Shrivastava. We were interviewing people associated with the book Living by the Code. It's an incredibly wonderful book available through Ray Wenderlich, and greatly recommend it. Nishant, do you have any comments about the Living by the Code book?
We spent the full season on it, and there's so many different more chapters that we couldn't cover. So that book is just like a gold mine that I would probably want everyone to check it out. It's super nice. And also it's super nice to be here at this webcast that we have.
Nishant was the co-host for season 11. Nishant, would you like to introduce yourself for people who haven't been listening in this season?
Yeah, I am Nishant Shrivastava. I'm basically based out of Berlin, working as an Android engineer, and I am dabbling into many different technologies. But Android is something that I love working with. This is why we are all here, I guess, Google I/O, the Android stuff.
And as Nishant mentioned, he is based out of Berlin, which means he's the one we're abusing the worst. It is 2 a.m. his time. Next up on our group today, we have Victoria Ganda. Victoria, would you care to introduce yourself?
I'd love to. Thanks for having me here. Yeah, I'm Victoria Ganda. I'm a software engineer based in Michigan in the United States. Currently on the Android team at Square. I've done stuff with Ray Wenderlich, both being an author on test-driven development for Android and Android accessibility. And then I'm also a co-host for a co-organizer for Chicago Roboto. It's not a podcast, it's
Chicago Roboto.
It is an Android conference based in Chicago. But last year and as well as this year, it's going to be virtual to keep everyone safe and to cater to you if you're just not ready to travel yet.
And much hope that all of these conferences will come back again next year as things are beginning to look better around at least the United States and slowly, hopefully, around the world as well. Next up is Fuad.
I am Fuad Kamal. I'm an Android developer also in the DC metro area, based in Maryland. I focus on Android for health and fitness and telematics industries. My background is actually more on iOS side, and then I moved over to Android. And I'm also an author on, I guess, 4 different Android and Kotlin books. Yeah.
Which books are you a co-author on?
So I started off with the Kotlin book and then Android Apprentice. So there's 3 of them already in books. The Android Apprentice, Saving Data on Android, and one's not released yet. Can I mention the title?
I am not at liberty to answer that question for you. So,
an upcoming book. I can't recall if we're allowed to say that on live or not. So.
But keep an eye out because that means that there will be a new book around the Android technologies.
Oh,
soon.
Ray said it's okay. So yeah, it's also Android app distribution, which is hopefully coming out very soon.
No, when the word from Ray comes down from on high in the Emerald Castle, we do what he says. So that's great. It's a book to look forward to. Subhrajyoti Sen is our last panelist today. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shubhajyoti Sen, and I'm based out of Bangalore in India. I'm also an Android developer, and I haven't really done anything else other than Android for as far as I can remember. At Ravensdale, I was the author on the Real World Android by Tutorials book that recently got published. And I also work as an author on different tutorials.
Wonderful. And as you can see, I have gathered 4 wonderfully well-known Android folks from the Ray Wenderlich crew to discuss what was a rather interesting event. Now, I admit I am a little slow on the uptake for this one, as I am more on the Apple technologies myself. But I will try to hold my own, as I did watch all of the keynotes today and the what's new on Android. So we'll see how things go. We do have, for those who were on the Zoom session, we do have a Q&A area and a chat area. If you have any kind of comment or any questions, please feel free to give them to us, because we'll be happy to turn them around and answer. This was an interesting experience right from the beginning. And I know Victoria watched the Toonyards and the Blob Opera as well, it was hard for me at first to tell what exactly the machine learning was providing for the Blob Opera. I wasn't familiar with them before. Had you seen them before?
No, I hadn't. It was something that was completely new to me, and I was excited to see. I just kind of made assumptions about what it was providing via machine learning, which I assume.
It seemed to be following along with the music and providing its own musical accompaniment in real time. So that was really quite impressive. And I got the impression that AI and machine learning were very, very strong on the agenda for today across the board. I see everybody nodding to that one. So I'll take each of you one at a time to get your general opinions on how they've really spun AI and machine learning. Let's start with Shubhajyoti.
Yeah, I mean, from the very beginning, when they started announcing the new version of the TPUs, and then progressively across different domains on Android, the things that they're trying to do. I mean, everything that they tried, I would say announcing, had an underlying of machine learning in it. And was starting from Google Photos. It's just that everything at this point that Google announces is somehow connected to machine learning. And it's, as a way, it's good for us. And that's something that I really liked, was the fact that it's privacy focused as well. So that was a key highlight. I felt like privacy combined with machine learning.
Victoria, you're nodding to that?
Yeah. Anytime that you see all these amazing things that you see that Google's doing with machine learning, and I feel like most of the time, the first time you hear it, you might think, that's kind of creepy. So it's kind of comforting to also have the privacy talk that they were talking about, that they're able to do a lot of these things on device without even sharing the audio that they're using to perform this machine learning on anywhere off of your device in order to do those things. So I really liked that they did have that privacy focus, and that they shared more about that.
Fuad, what stood out for you?
Yeah, so I mean, again, on the ML thing, one thing I've always noticed traditionally is Google versus Apple with machine learning. Apple's always been we do everything on device, everything is local, nothing goes out to the cloud. And Google's power really was we have these massive farms of machines that will do all this amazing ML. And this is one of the reasons why I think they've been in general stronger on the ML side. But today they actually went the other way as well and said, you know what, we're doing stuff locally, all your private stuff is on device. And it's really just, whenever we do send to the cloud, it's being sent in a private way that's not allowing you to be identified. So that was very interesting that they've kind of changed their stance on that, and they've really focused more on privacy as well. So it's interesting how we're leveraging the cloud, but we're also keeping stuff local to device.
Nishant, do you want to add anything in?
Yeah, I would rather say that on the same line, I mean, it's a general topic here itself. But one thing that maybe that stood out for me is that we've been talking about edge computing all the time, and we say, okay, this is how this version would look like. But what Google is actually doing is actually pushing the boundaries of actually doing computing on the edge, as in on your devices, the on-device thing that's happening, right? So initially, all the machine learning, as Fahad was talking about, that is all server-based. But now the idea is that just how do we compress this down to the smallest model possible and squeeze out all the performance efficiency out of it? And I guess that's what they were actually showcasing in most of the end result of the product, which has obviously taken years to come to this point. And that was pretty unique. Like we actually seen the progress over multiple Google I/Os, but now seeing the final version of something that as a product, it makes more sense, and we can see the use of it in real life.
And of course, one of the uses of that was to talk to a paper airplane and to the planet Pluto, which in itself, it seems silly now, but in all honesty, the demonstration of Lambda, which was language model for dialogue applications, was truly awe-inspiring to hear it actually be able to interact with what is natural vernacular. Does anybody else really follow up on Lambda or any interest there?
I do want to add that I love the code names. I was tweeting about this during the session. Lambda, mom, this is like super nice. Mom is for the multitask understanding model, I think. And yeah, all of these like code names are so unique. I mean, this is what we need now. This is gonna be such a common part of our language when we're communicating with people. I was like, oh, so I'm using the mom language model or something like that. So that's gotta be funny when we do it across like developers talking about this.
Well, some of the other announcements, of course, were the Smart Canvas and Google Meet becoming more available and more refined and more features. Obviously, one of the things that really caught people's eyes was Android 12. Which is Android S, and it was announced later on that the S stands for 12. That's what the developers thought. They said that Android S stands for 12. But Material U, or Material Next, as was also referred to, is admittedly very pretty. And some very interesting variations on controls. I'm not as familiar, so let me start with Victoria on this one. Your general opinion on Material U and Next.
Yeah, it is something that I'm really excited about. It looks beautiful. I know that like it may be more difficult depending on how you use it. It seems like there's like a lot of more padding and rounded corners, which I don't know much about design. I think it looks pretty. Even if it might take up a little bit of space with the padding, but I'm mostly really excited about the colors and the way that with Android 12, it'll be able to kind of like pick a color palette from your wallpaper and apply it across apps, and that we can build our own apps that use that color palette in what looks like a really flexible way. Like it sounds like there will be a whole bunch of different accent colors that you can pick from that work within this palette that your whole phone could use, whether it be from the widget to the system apps to whatever app you download from the Play Store, if they have it set up.
And it really looked like if you prescribe to the way the palette is designed, as that background changes or as the user decides what overall picture they're using, your palette will adjust appropriately and in sync with that picture.
Mm-hmm. That is what that seems like.
Fuad?
Yeah, also, the guy who's presenting on it also kind of hinted at that, hey, you know, I'd hate to be a designer because, you know, a lot of designers are like, we need every pixel to be here and there. So it seems like, you know, I had to agree that it seems like it'll be a little bit of a headache and a little bit of a scary issue for designers because like they really want to control on how things look. But I think it's also like, it offers a lot of dynamic features, I think, which are really cool. And if designers learn to embrace that, designers and developers both, if they can learn to embrace that and use those features, I think it'll be really good for the end user. And I think they also hinted also in the Android session that it will be easier if you're already using material design to convert to this stuff. But if you're doing a lot of custom stuff, it's going to be a lot harder for you.
It seems like it is a new design vocabulary for the designers to use. I know, I agree that I think it may actually scare off designers initially who are very focused on branding and brand feels. Obviously, you can say, well, I'm going to follow that palette or I won't follow that palette, but it'll be interesting to see the people who find a way to brand while being attached to the new palette. Shubhajyoti?
Yeah. So one thing I'm interested in seeing is the adoption of it. Like given we already discussed about the branding part, but another thing I feel it's good in a way that with Material, Google was trying to make developers standardize the way they actually theme the entire app. Since like once you think of Material, you think in terms of layers and what specific colors are, and not in terms of just calling blue blue. You would think, what does blue represent in your app? So with this Material U, it's like, I think Google is trying to standardize it a bit more so that every developer tries to think in terms of theming in a standardized way. So that might be heading in a good direction. And the fact that it's
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
My bad. And the fact that it's across devices is also the mention. So if you have things like a Wear OS, an Android TV, if that syncs across, like if you have a favorite color, it's actually going to be a very seamless experience using different devices, because you'll be getting the similar feeling across like the entire ecosystem. So that would be a really nice touch.
Nishant?
I actually felt that it is going to make life simpler for developers and designers both. The reason for that being is that up till now, the way that developers and designers were collaborating is that designers would come up with, let's say, we are going to make everything material design, and that would require you to like tweak different parts of the view itself, like the UI that you're looking at, right? But what Google is now coming up forward is saying, you actually don't want to touch the UI as much, but you just want to change the color, right? And that's much easier to work with if the operating system controls it. This is how I saw it. If people are conforming to the setup that Google is suggesting, that's the default theming, whatever that they have. I mean, that app takes the color that the user wants. So personalization happens automatically. So that's how I thought. Maybe it is tricky. We don't know. Once we start implementing it as developers, we'll see what are the edge cases here and there. But yeah, it is a very good approach. I feel like it's moving to make things more uniform, and having developers as well as like indie developers not have to think a lot about their design themselves. They're like, yeah, we just give you the default version, and it blends in with the operating system and looks good at the same time, right? So there's less burden, there's less stress on an indie developer to think about design now. They just go ahead with the default one and also see a dynamic palette being changed as per the user of the device.
Mm-hmm. So shifting gears a bit, Michael Pena helped us with quantum computing today. Normally, I'm not necessarily somebody who goes gaga over random actors coming in to help streamline, but what do people feel about the advancements and what the roadmap looks like for quantum computing for Google? Let me start with Fuad on this one.
First of all, I think it was awesome that they brought that actor on. I think he did a really good job of breaking things down and making stuff easy for lay people to understand. So I thought it was hilarious. It was really funny, and I thought it was really nice that he did that. I'm not really sure, like as far as the hardware and stuff like they talk about, I'm not really an engineer per se, from the hardware side. So I don't know like how awesome the hardware improvements they've done are. So it doesn't really mean a whole lot to me. So I don't know if I can speak that much. I mean, especially like if you compare to Apple's M1 and all that, like I really don't know like what are the performance and how does it compare, and also Google's approach with the server farms. So I don't really know what to say about that. But it looks cool, and the AI that the end effect of what they're doing with it is really amazing.
Yeah, it did look quite impressive. Let me head back to some other announcements that occurred. One of which was that the Wear OS is now going to be a combined platform with Samsung. And Nishant, I saw your eyebrows rise over this one.
Yeah, I mean, Samsung has been trying to work with Wear OS, and against VROS at the same time, right? So they have Tizen OS, which has been around at the same time, and then they also had watches that were running VROS for some time, and then they abandoned it. And it was so funny when actually they said that they are both combining forces now towards a new version, a common platform. So yeah, I mean, this merger probably is a better approach because Samsung being one of the leading OEMs for Android, um, maybe it moves in some direction that people actually acknowledge VROS. But yeah, it's a good move. It's a good move in a good direction. And also in the mix, Fitbit is also now involved. So that just maybe amplifies the whole marketing itself, that it should go forward in a much nicer manner, I would say.
Yeah, the Fitbit acquisition is huge. I mean, we saw that a while ago, and we were still waiting. I think we still don't know what's going to come out of it. But I mean, one of the biggest complaints I've heard from people who are involved in Wear is that it's not even close to the WatchOS from Apple. Like, I wear an Apple Watch, and I rely on it for all kinds of health stuff, and just a lot of those features are not available on Wear OS, unfortunately. But it looks like, first of all, Samsung and this Google partnership looks like a really good thing to make that improve. And also, you know, what they were saying with the measurements and the health measurements that Samsung brings to the table, that's going to really improve things. And then Fitbit, they actually came out and said, we're going to make this, I forget what basically they said they're going to make high-end watches. So we'll see, we'll see what comes out of that, but hopefully something really good.
Shubhajyoti, do you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah. So it was actually good to see that Google did try, taking control over the entire thing. That, okay, we would come up with a watch. Rather, they are relying on whatever expertise these individual companies have. Like Samsung could come up with the hardware, and Fitbit has the health stuff. So like leveraging all of that together and trying to come up with something better there. And Google trying to do, like, since it handles the software, trying to do better on that in terms of whatever developer support is coming up, the tooling support, because that was something that was like lacking for a while and things were quiet there. So like everyone's trying to do their own best part. And I feel like that's going to make like Wear OS something back again, like something I would look forward to actually getting my hands on.
I really enjoy watching these because I admittedly live in my Apple bubble, so I don't typically know a lot of the things that are going on in the world of Android. And I was really, I have to admit, to me, shopping is Amazon, and I didn't even realize that there was that depth of what is shopping in the world of Google, especially with Lens and the advancements that Lens is going through. Also, and there was also, I tend to be not familiar with maps. Does anyone want to comment on maps or shopping? It was briefly touched upon, but it was still rather interesting.
I have a question for you guys. From the shopping perspective, do you know, does Google take a cut from all the e-commerce? Like if you search on Google and then you buy something through that Google experience, do they get a cut of that? Is that part of their business model?
I would assume it's the data that they get, and not the cut directly, because I'm basically the end result is the search, right? They want search to show up, and then obviously your product gets sold. So I'm pretty sure they are not taking cut for this.
I mean, they mentioned they mentioned that they're working with all these companies and they're bringing like the shopping experience, like, they're helping all these mid to small size companies become visible, to the end shopper. So I'm just wondering, like, what does it take? Is it just data?
Well, they said that it was free for merchants, especially through Shopify, and then Shopify has its own business model. So maybe that there's some form of large contract between, and this is just supposition, there's a large contract between Google and Shopify, and then Shopify is taking its cut from its vendors, and then Google's taking its cut from Shopify. Again, that's purely supposition. I couldn't say for sure.
Sounds like a viable, sorry, I was just going to say, sounds like a viable business model.
And if it's not, you think it's a viable business model, I'm free for, no, I would just.
They could also just utilize Shopify's user base to improve the product, like the shopping experience, right? Shopify is the pioneer in right now for creating these like small shops, the online version of things, right? So Google just wants to leverage all these expertise and just bring some of this information and build upon it. That could also be part of the deal. And that's
So
also speculation.
one of the subtexts I noticed in the keynote was that, and they put this, the spin they put on it was a privacy spin. They said, we will not reveal what's in your cart. Like whenever you open a new tab in Chrome now, it's going to show your cart. And we won't reveal your cart to any third-party users unless you give us permission, which to me says the opposite. That if you give us permission, we're going to share this stuff, and that's part of our business model. So I don't know.
But one of those things also was that it's privacy defaulting to you, and you have the controls to change that are being made easier. So that feeling of do no evil still stands just a little bit there, that maybe that the privacy is important. And I don't want to compare apples and Googles, but I was pleased to see a lot of the carbon neutral, the carbon footprint issues coming up. I'm glad to see a lot more major technology corporations taking this much of an interest in rebuilding these campuses to be energy efficient. And that's really pleasing to see. We talked about, sorry, go ahead.
The conclusion of the keynote was amazing. I mean, it was like a step up. Like we've taken a step further than Apple ever did. Like they made a new campus. We're making a new campus, and it's geothermally powered. That was pretty incredible.
Yeah, it was just that was amazing to see, and I'm looking forward to seeing what that campus looks like. I have to admit, there was one little thing in the keynote that made me just sort of sit back and go, "Wow!" And did anybody else catch Project Starline? The here, go talk to a 3D avatar of somebody right across the room from you.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Which was using 3D photography, 3D modeling, 3D rendering. It boggles the mind. I want to go to my local Google headquarters and see if I can interview them to find out what this thing is like, because they showed it and you see it in 2D. There's no way to truly understand that these people were getting emotional in that environment. And that doesn't come from a Zoom chat, with all due respect to Zoom chats. But did anybody else really, how did everybody else react when they saw that? Was it the first time you'd seen it, or is this just a surprise for me?
So have you guys ever heard of Litro camera? I think they went out of business now, but like this is like a light field or light sensing camera that would let you take a photograph of something and then you could like kind of visualize it in 3D. So it was a new technology, and it didn't go very far, but it looks like Google took that and went like way further with it. So that was interesting. They mentioned the technology. I forget what it's called. It's like light field or something like that. But yeah, I mean, it was quite amazing.
So, yeah, it was absolutely new to me, and it's almost like, where has that been this past year? I want to use it. Sign me up. Especially being a remote employee, like I spend a lot of time on video call, and it does, that Zoom fatigue is real. You don't get the same experience being able to like read people's body language as well in like this 2D flat video.
Yeah, especially as I keep fading into the background. I mean, you definitely don't get any body language there. But yeah, it absolutely was astounding technology. And I remember being at Microsoft when the Surface was first introduced, and that was back when the Surface was a large table. But being astounded at that. So I'm curious to see how that will scale for more widespread use. They said it's only in a few locations, but nonetheless, it was just amazing to see.
I can actually just add to this that in 2015, I was in Google I/O, and they were introducing this depth sensor based cameras from Intel actually. And this technology has been around for some time, but it was super small and they could not actually let it capture more of your data, right? So in order to do that, the way they actually gave us some glass setup also that could model us in 3D space. So they actually had to go around us so that they could model everything. But what this new version that they showcased, it was doing in front of us in real time and at a large scale. That was astounding for me. I mean, the technology probably has existed for some time, but making it work in the right use case, maybe the pandemic helped that this use case became one of the options. So I guess we are seeing some of these nice implementations of all of this new technologies.
So
Something that
yeah,
might
go
be
ahead.
related to this, I'm not sure, but for some time, Google has been developing their algorithms on depth sensing on just algorithms. So if you notice other phones, they have usually multiple cameras for depth sensing, but the Pixels usually have just one camera, and still they're somehow able to do a bit of depth sensing with just on-device ML. So it could be related that maybe whatever advancements they made there came in a bit handy there, since they could make use of the same hardware, but the software does the magic.
And one of the cool things I thought, not just like this, I mean, it was a nice showcase for how they did this, the light field camera technology to sit in front of someone and like they're really there. But one thing they alluded to and they showed a lot of in all the different presentations today was the application to healthcare. I think that's groundbreaking. Like you can take a photo of a skin condition and you can get it analyzed online. And they kept mentioning this is so true. Like there's such a shortage of experts like radiologists and different kind of healthcare workers that are not available to many people, especially third world and other places where you can't get to a doctor all the time. I think at least for triage and for getting, people attention who need it faster, the breast cancer thing, I mean, this stuff is huge.
Yeah, that was some astounding things. I want to shift to the dev keynote, predominantly because the Google I/O keynote is admittedly look at our big products for people who are not really developers. There's almost no, you sit there watching a keynote and you're thinking like, that's really neat. I wonder if I'll be able to do things like that. And sure, they showed off Android 12 with the new UI, but getting a little deeper on things. So they talked in Android 12 in the dev about user safety, performance, and the new UX. And I was interested about the auditing and the permission intent APIs. Can any of you explain how you took the permission intent APIs and what that meant? I'm trying to see who's nodding the most at the moment. Anybody feel free to jump in there because I'm on my own here.
I mean, part of it is there. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, part of it, I felt like Apple before, again, was introducing a lot of like from the beginning, they're like, we're all about privacy. That's our whole business model, privacy, blah, blah, blah. And Google, I think, is now following in that. And a lot of the permissions they're introducing are permissions that we've had in iOS, like the Bluetooth thing, and, like approximate location. I'm like, oh, yeah, we just saw that in iOS too. So it's like hand in hand. You see stuff on one platform and it's coming up in the other. But both companies and both platforms are saying like, you know what, we're trying to focus more on safety and privacy from a user standpoint. So versus not just like we're selling your data, but if you try to track the user, we're going to make sure they know about it. Or if you want to connect to their devices, we're going to make sure that we prompt them and let them know that this is happening. So everything is there's a high level of visibility from what your app is trying to do versus what the user is noticing that you're doing or not.
And it looks like, go ahead.
I feel like we saw this in like a whole bunch of little things. They're big things, but they're also little things. This putting the privacy into the user's hands, whether that is when you're granting permissions, being able to grant approximate location or just while the app is open, as well as the privacy dashboard they talked about for a little bit, seeing how often what apps are like using your location is what I gathered from that, to having like little toasts being like, oh, hey, an app is looking at your clipboard. You might want to know about that. And things like that, just all sprinkled around that showed this commitment to that.
And besides the commitment to user safety, there's also the commitment to performance. by trying to get things to move more quickly, to get them to launch more quickly. They said that there are now new launch animations. Though I believe it was in the what's new in Android, they said the default animation should be all you need to get your app up and running, though you can actually bypass it with your own, though that may not necessarily be as quick.
Yeah.
Shubroti, do you have anything?
Yeah, so I mean, till now, there wasn't really a straightforward way of transitioning how your app opened up. There was some, I would say, hacky ways, but not really reliable. So it's been a long-standing one from a lot of indie developers, at least. So good to see that's being addressed, and our default option being there, because a lot of apps just open up with a white screen and we wait for a few seconds and then things show up. So something out of the box which looks present, that's like, I would say, a great addition. And the fact that we can plug into that and change a few things wherever we need. So they really thought it through, like based on the developer feedback all these years. So that was a really nice addition.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it's performant as well.
Now, some of the other technologies that they say were in Android 12 also they're improving on toasts, they're improving on widgets, they're improving on the notifications. Though there was something about the notifications and that they're deprecating the custom views.
Till now, you could follow the templates that Google provided for the notifications, or you could write your own custom views. So if you're using the templates, they are backward compatible. So with the newer versions, nothing will break. But if you're using your own custom views, you will come across a lot of issues. And it varies again from version to version. So there's a lot of, if you're using custom views, you'd have anyway a lot of handling for different OS versions. So I think, again, it's the same thing that they're trying to standardize things and not making sure that developers don't do too much custom things, which can break across versions. Like once you follow the template, you're actually, you have a peace of mind that, okay, it's going to work across versions, and Google kind of guarantees that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this was also hand in hand with the material you stuff. So like if you, like Subha was saying, if you're doing custom stuff, you can still do custom stuff, but whatever you did is going to break, and you can have a lot more work to bring it back up to working again. Or you could just, if you're already using material design, then moving to material U won't be a huge deal.
I think you can't do custom anymore. That's what the final was for, at least for Android 12. They just shut down Toast custom views totally.
Oh, really?
They said, "You can't do
Completely?
it."
Okay.
Yeah. It's like, that's what I think it was Dan who was talking about this, saying that you just see the toast and you don't know where it's coming from. So we just slapped an icon on it, and that's it. You're not changing anything in this toast. You just see the name, whatever the text is, and an icon. That's it. You
And they
don't
said the
touch toast anymore.
The toast text is now smaller. So if you actually need to get a message in what you were using as a toast, to use the notifications instead.
Yes.
We already had we had a limit, like from the material design, like what their guidelines is like, if you need more than 2 lines, you should not be using a toast. And there was maybe a character limit, but now they've said there is a character limit. And if you need more than this, then you need to use a different UI widget. But I didn't catch that they're saying you can't customize, because right now in Toast, like you can round the corners more. There's like certain things. There's a lot of companies want to do this. Like one of the places I'm working at now, they want to have certain customizations. But I think it's harder. You're completely shutting it down now? Are you sure?
No, it was the notifications can't be customized, I thought.
No, that is also there, but the toast, I think they were shut down in one of the developer previews already. They mentioned upfront that this is going away. Please don't customize your toast at all. And those who have actually built libraries on custom toast, they were like, what happens to our libraries now? They just don't work on Android 12. So yeah, that's tricky.
And something interesting there is that these like smaller features, right, like showing the icon of the toast bar, these actually have existed in the custom theming community for a while. Like custom Android versions have had like these features, and it's interesting how Google is actually seeing that, okay, these have wider adoption in the community, and they're actually picking up those features and actually implementing back in the OS. So more people can get it. So that icon in the toast was something like that, which has existed for a couple of years, but it's pretty handy.
Of course. Oh, go
the
ahead.
way I understood the icon thing was like, because one of the contexts of Toast is that you're in a different app and getting a Toast from another app that's in the background. So now they're showing the app icon from where it's coming from. So you know that this Toast is coming from such and such app. That's not on front right now.
Yeah. And what I was about to say was the betas still do change from release to release. I know that they do take a lot of feedback, and some things can be pulled, some things can be returned. Sometimes they can undeprecate the deprecate annotation. This was the first thing that caught my attention, but I think they really drew attention to that on purpose, that there was a deprecated annotation that was unintentionally deprecated. So it's been undeprecated. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
It was more of a joke. The developer, Android developer one, they had a lot of jokes like that,
Mhm.
kind of like dad jokes.
Yeah, it felt refreshing after a few hours of teleprompt reading.
Yeah, it's I kept watching some of the different camera shots, trying to figure out where the teleprompters were. Does anybody want to talk about trampolines and what changes have occurred there?
I've actually faced the same issue, just like I think 2 hours before the keynote, where I clicked on a notification and the app didn't open up for a few seconds. And I wasn't sure like which chat the notification was from, so it would be difficult. And then 2 seconds later, the thing just popped up. So till now, what was happening is once you click on a notification, there are multiple ways you could handle it. You could offload it to some other service which would fetch data and then open up the app, which would cause a delay because you don't really know how long that might take. Now they're forcing you that if you click on the notification, it directly has to launch the app and not take a custom route. So it's a smoother experience, and they can ensure an animation that way as well, since it's synchronous. That since you're forced to launch the app directly, they can give you an animation as well.
Yeah, I think this is something that's going to greatly improve user experience as an Android user. I've run into this plenty of times. I also think it's one of those things that's going to be something that could make it a pain to get ready for Android 12 for some teams. Some upgrades are easy, some are not. This could make it a little bit trickier for some.
There's always a couple of things that change in an OS that just are going to cause some people to get bitten rather hard.
One good thing they have done with at least this keynote, that I mean, this IO that I notice is whenever they're introducing something, that even giving you some kind of a migration way that, okay, these are the things we are changing, but these might be your concerns, we have a way. So even for the trampoline thing they told you about, there's this, I forgot the name, but there's this new job that you can start up if you need something very urgent. So every time they're introducing something which might lead to a concern, they're addressing that to some extent as well, which is good to see. Not keeping it like, hanging in the minds of developers.
Yeah, for sure. I know they have a lot of on-demand content this year, which is cool because, we can do that because it's virtual. We don't have to like go to a physical stage and watch something in person. But one of the ones that I'm looking forward to is they have one about getting ready for Android 12, and looking forward to seeing all those migration tips.
So let's talk about some of the newer tools that have been announced. Obviously, Android Studio, which is always going through changes, is now Arctic Fox. That was available. One of the things I know that I've discussed with Nishant throughout the season was Jetpack Compose being forever in beta. And now 1.0 is coming in July. And everybody's nodding about this. Everybody seems to be rather happy about that. Nishant, you especially?
I would say this is a general theme. Like it's like when Kotlin was officially announced at Google I/O, everyone just like rejoiced, and I think this was also going on Twitter, where we were saying that if we were present in person and they said that it's gonna go stable in 2 months, everyone is gonna rejoice the same way. So that's something that people are actually looking forward to. Jetpack Compose is basically just revolutionizing how we wrote UI code. It's like it's an equivalent for Apple would be at the Swift UI. So it's actually bringing us out of a very old age of Android as we have been working with. It's just a joy to work with. So it going stable, it's just pushes everyone else to go ahead and maybe talk to their team, suggest this as an option, just start working with better APIs. So, I mean, I'm happy. I'm pretty sure every other Android developer is also happy about this.
Yeah.
This is a really common question that I've seen a lot from developers in different groups and companies. Like, can we use Compose yet? Can we use Compose yet? Is it? And the answer has always been it's not stable enough. It's not really ready for production. I was surprised it said how many companies are actually using it in production now. So the fact that it's coming out in a stable release is tremendous.
One of the things they commented about was to be more open, but at the same time take a stand on things. And I think that goes back to that general concept of waiting for Google to bless a technology before people are really ready to run and embrace it. Am I right in that observation, Victoria?
Yeah, I mean, it felt very similar with things like in the past we had like Kotlin, where a lot of people kind of waited to use that until Google like put their blessing on it, like you said. So there's always kind of that mix of there are companies who are like, yeah, this fits our needs, we're gonna go in and do it. Then there's others that are like, we want to use what Google says, this is what we trust. And yeah, I've seen both of those, and you know, there's always new exciting things that we want to try.
Fuad?
Sorry, what was the question?
That's all right. It was just the talk about people don't necessarily embrace technologies until Google is given a blessing.
Yeah, I don't really have a strong opinion on that. I mean, Kotlin for sure, it made a huge difference when they adopted it officially.
Mhm. So let's see, some of the other things that were introduced at the developer keynote include Flutter 2.2 and Vertex AI, which was seemingly we can do anything with machine learning now in a minimal number of lines. The Vertex AI basically seemed to be a do it all for you kind of package. Are any of you machine learning aficionados, or should we just back away from that one slowly and smile and nod?
I know very limited about machine learning, but one thing that I do like about this is like every year that I'm more impressed with how much more accessible machine learning is being made, especially by Google when we hear the stuff at Google I/O. I feel like with, for example, a lot of the announcements that we saw today, machine learning is backing a lot of technology. So those improvements to make it more accessible to people who might not know very much about machine learning, like me, I feel like those are important and exciting.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I did notice also is that they are leveraging and making more like, again, device centric machine learning available. So like one of the things they showed was like, we can save the server a lot of load by just screening out these bots, you know, on the web before they even hit the server. So that is very interesting that even in the browser, they're using this ML stuff.
Two of the things that I found personally interesting, going back to Flutter 2.2, was the fact that they are, well, now I've known that Flutter is the write once, run anywhere language that Google is basically saying, yes, write for Android, write for iOS, write for Mac. But I was surprised to hear that Material U is going to be part of Flutter, because it seems to almost take some of the key Android technologies and put them out there into places where they're almost defeating their own business model. Nishant, you're smiling.
This is a valid question. The point here is that this is always coming up in wherever Flutter is talked and Android is talked at the same time. They both have different areas where these are being used. So actually, this Flutter actually embracing Material U is part of the process, because before Material U came through, Android was using Material as a UI language, right? And Flutter also did the same thing. So this scenario still existed. It's not new. It's basically just saying that now that Android is moving to Material U, we will catch up and do the same thing. The main point to note here is that Flutter actually is not being used in those performance specific use cases that Android is being used. So they're not competing, but rather they are both moving at the same time. Just maybe Flutter is taking a chunk of the Android ecosystem to a certain extent, but not like 100% of it.
Another thing I
That's my
noticed was
personal view.
another thing I noticed was that it seems like they're trying to establish a thematic unity among all their platforms. So they were saying Chrome OS and Android, and basically they want to have that. Material U is not just for Android; it's for all of their platforms.
Yeah, I know I've used material design libraries or bootstrapping, or I'm not a web developer. I don't know what it's called. On like little websites that I've created and seen like libraries on, I don't know, lots of different platforms. So I think they're trying to aim for material design to be a design language that can be used anywhere.
Mm-hmm. And one of the, go ahead.
They kind of actually focus on that as well, like how material is evolving for different screen sizes. So phones, tablets, or even bigger screens. So I think like it's just going in sync to what Victoria said, that a more universal design language. And it's, I would say, growing on both the sides in terms of how you can develop for it and how the language supports all of it.
And one of the sessions they're going to have is how to get started with Flutter and Firebase in one app. It's one of the sessions that's coming up, and Firebase is something I have a bit of experience in from using Crashlytics for my app personally, but seeing some of the Firebase extensions that they're adding in so that you can address Stripe, MailChimp, MessageBird, a lot of really fantastic technologies on their own that are now accessible through the Accelerate extensions that are going into Firebase. A lot of the new performance, I cannot speak English at this hour. Performance monitoring and the real-time metrics, seeing the ability to personalize and configure your app remotely, has some amazing technological things. And they demonstrated a game that you could actually personalize by the usage of that game for the end user, if he's a casual user or she's a more regular user of the game. They can do whatever they want with it. I don't know if Firebase is an area anybody wants to talk about, but it's just one of the areas that I kind of find nifty.
That last point that you made was one of the things that I found extra exciting. That personalization via like the remote config and machine learning there. I think that's one of the ways that apps can start to personalize their experience without that like knowledge of machine learning for them to be able to learn their user. But Google is already able to provide that, and you can plug it in. I'm really curious what that integration looks like and how it can be applied to things other than games, because I'm sure it can. And I'm excited to see the applications that come out from that.
I can easily see a way to say, I'm going to roll this feature to a limited number of a limited percentage of people and see how it plays before I release it across the board. Definitely has a lot of running room on there, which I guess is one of the reasons they felt it was good to add. I'm not going to go into some of the other stuff from what's new for Android too much. The new graphic format, the auto transcoding of video files, But I wouldn't like to say that I was really thrilled to see that they evolved the APIs, the pre-12 look at drag and drop and copy paste and keyboard stickers, and how they actually said, we're going to fix that so that you only have one call to actually use all these technologies. And there's still a migration path to work with that in Android X. But that was just a couple of things that kind of stood out to me because I have no idea what I'm watching or talking about. But the four of you do, and I really appreciate everyone's time. I want to thank each and every one of you. Victoria Gonda, thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of Google I/O. It'll be interesting to see what the other sessions hold. Before we go, is there anything that you're really looking forward to? Some of the sessions you've already mentioned or some other sessions?
Yeah, it might not come to a surprise to anyone who has met me, but I'm very excited for the session tomorrow for what's new with Android accessibility. So I'm very excited about that. Some of the other fun ones that I've started watching is like what's new on Jetpack. There's a lot of little improvements for all of the various Jetpack libraries now, making our lives easier. And yeah, I feel like there's a lot of improvements to learn.
I also want to thank Victoria again. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Fuad, any specific sessions you're looking forward to?
I'm really looking forward to the health and fitness stuff. Some of the Wear OS stuff looks very interesting. So it's just exciting to see what's coming out on the Android platform with that and see how things are improving with that. And again, like how they're leveraging ML with all of that.
And I, again, want to thank you and your secondary camera angle for joining us today. Subhadoti-sen, anything that you are specifically looking forward to?
There are two things I'm specifically looking forward to. One's the session on testing. They have been doing a lot lately on benchmarking. Even the previous I/O had some of it, this I/O as well. So given that tools like systrace are quite complicated to understand, the fact that they're actually creating libraries around it, it's something really interesting. And the improvements around motion layout, since it's a very powerful API to do what we have been struggling to do over the years. And the fact that we can, preview the animations without having to run on devices. So those are two things I'm really looking forward to.
And thank you very much for joining us today. And my partner in crime for Series 11, Nishant Shrivastava, what are you looking forward to?
I'll actually do completely opposite. I tend to read Android documentations and I watch Android videos randomly. So I will actually most probably watch everything that's related to machine learning, on device machine learning. I'm super interested in. That's something that I would not do by myself. So this is a very good time to dive into it, go through all these nice sessions that they're having. They also have some workshops which are pretty interesting, which I would want to attend.
Thank you again for joining us this early morning as it's coming up on 3 a.m. Berlin time. Everybody else is, well, it's about 7 a.m. for Subhajyoti, right? About 7? Now, Nishant will be back with us in a few weeks when we tackle the WWDC keynotes from Apple. So keep an eye on raywenderlich.com. I want to thank my technical producer for this episode, Brian Moakley, who's been hiding behind the Ray Wenderlich logo, but making sure everything's been running smoothly. I want to thank Katie and Joan for all of the work they do to keep this season going. And of course, the man himself, Ray Wenderlich, the Emerald Eagle of this series. It is great to have his support to make these shows happen. And of course, I want to thank all of you for tuning in. You'll be able to watch this again on YouTube when it's edited in a few weeks. Thank you so much for joining us and have a wonderful evening. Ray, back to you.